It's day 4 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look at what happened inside the courtroom. Lawyers weren't able to pull the final 12 jurors on Friday, so that is now going to be pushed to Monday before opening statements. Now, next week is going to be big. Cassie Ventura, who is Diddy's ex-partner and really who a lot of people are deeming the star witness of this case, is expected to testify along with 2 other witnesses. These testimonies are going to be extremely important. Building a case against someone as high profile as Diddy is not an easy job. So I'm going to bring in former FBI agent Bobby Chacon to talk more about this. So, off the bat, Bobby, how do you build a case against a celebrity as well resourced and powerful as Diddy?
Well, it takes a lot, Safia, as you know, because the allegations in this case range from like 2004 to 2024. So this is going to be going on for 20 years, and they're finally getting around to charging him now and trying now. That's because it's so difficult to get people who are not afraid to come forward. This person was powerful. They were rich. They had a lot of influence. They were allegedly violent. So all of those things add up to making it very difficult for investigators to get people to talk to them about these. You add in the fact that many of these things are embarrassing. They're of a sexual nature. They're private. They take place behind closed doors, and that adds to the reticence of witnesses coming forward and talking about these things. And so investigators have to do a lot of long, hard work in getting these witnesses to trust them. Number one, to make sure they feel like they are being treated, not as a pawn in a game to get Diddy, but as people that really care, that the prosecution cares about these people. And so you bring in victim witness people who are trained really and have the background in talking to people who are maybe victims of alleged sexual violence. And so you bring in specialists that kind of can talk to people like that, and get them to open up about these things and to trust the investigators and trust the prosecutors, that they're just not going to be thrust into a situation where they're basically being used as a pawn. So you really have to do a lot of that, real in-depth personal work. It's particularly important to have people that are trained in talking to victims of this nature or allegedly of this nature, because there is a certain approach you have to take, and it takes a lot of training on the part of the person who's going to interview them and to try to gain their trust. But it's not an easy job.
It's really interesting. You brought up about witnesses being more intimidated in situations like this. Do you think this case there's an issue of like protecting witnesses? And if so, I mean, how do agents determine and coordinate if witnesses need extra protection in cases like this?
Well, yeah, so that's always I actually started my FBI career working the mob in New York City in the late 80s, which is when John Gotti was coming of age and in his trials. And we always dealt with potential witness tampering or witness threatening or jury tampering. So you
Right.
do have, in a case like this, you do have people that, could possibly, and so if any threats, when you talk to your witnesses as you're developing the case and you're developing them, again, it goes back to that trust. If you have to get them to trust you, so that if someone does make a threat, even it's veiled, people can do that on social media now. They can say things that are kind of a little bit wonky sometimes, or these veiled threats. So if the witnesses that you're developing are comfortable enough with you, they will bring those threats to you, or those situations where they might feel threatened. You always have, on the federal level, we have the Witness Protection Program, right, which is run by the U.S. Marshal Service. That's kind of a very extreme step, because that's somebody you change their identity, you move them to another part of the country. They're not allowed any contact with previous people in their lives. So it's the Witness Protection Program is one of the more extreme steps that you take. But there are other steps you can take to ensure the witness that they're not going to be subject to that. If anyone does make a statement that's even considered something like that, you send a team to go out and investigate and to question that person and to get them to maybe make a retraction or to kind of back off a little bit. So you do have to do a good job at making sure the witnesses are comfortable that if anything should happen that they feel uncomfortable about, they bring it to you, and then you have to address it in the ways that are available to you.
I mean, as an investigator, I'm just listening to you. It's really hard to build a case in the first place. So then how do you kind of preserve your case once it gets to the courtroom, once testimony starts, or is it like out of your hands at that point? I mean, how involved are investigators?
No, it's on the federal level. We were kind of like, I used to sit at the government table during my trials. I sat right next to the prosecutor, so I was an integral part of the team throughout the trial. I was usually the first witness at the trial,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes also the last witness at the trial. So the jury got to see me every day, and so you're an integral part of that team because, as you said, the issues you brought up, they last throughout the trial. I had a murder witness melt down on me in the middle of the trial. They got intimidated, and they actually misidentified on purpose because they were afraid in the middle of the
Oh
trial.
my
And of course,
gosh.
both attorneys jumped to their feet. Objections were made, and so I had to kind of go down. Because this person was in custody, I had to go down and talk to her below the courthouse and say, what happened? Why did you do this? We had talked to you yesterday about your testimony, and then you got on the stand and completely changed. So you're very nervous throughout the course until you get that verdict. I mean, it actually gets more nerve wracking and more intense, as you get closer to getting a verdict. You have to preserve the jury, make sure they aren't tainted. You have to make sure your witnesses are well taken care of, and that takes a team. It's not just the investigators, but we do have victim witness coordinators who come and bring resources. If you need resources to just get them moved to a different neighborhood or a different place, not short of the witness protection program, but just to get them moved out of a certain area maybe and into a different geographic area. You have resources like that. There are resources available to victims both on the state and federal level that investigators can work with and make sure you're preserving your witnesses, not only, at the trial, but even after the trial. Make sure once you get that verdict that these witnesses are going to be taken care of, even after that. And they're given all the resources that the law allows and provides for them.
Wow. It's going to be definitely interesting to see what happens next week. Thank you so much for your insights,
Sure.
Bobby. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.